In the 7th year of his marriage to Lu Fei, his white moonlight returned to China. It rained that day, and she knocked on the door of our house wetly. Afei, I have a quarrel with my family and I really have nowhere to go. Can you let me shelter from the rain at your house? Lu Fei, who has always had a bad temper, said. You are so mature. Why are you so wet? Come in quickly. Even my 5-year-old son was busy bringing towels and new clothes in a hurry. They scrambled to take care of Dingli and completely forgot my existence. There is even an exquisite cake on the table, and a table of dishes made by me with all my heart. Today is our 7th anniversary. I rarely got angry and filed for divorce with Lu Fei in a calm tone. 1. Lu Fei and I are traditional business marriages. He is the only boy in the Lu family, the young master who was born with a golden spoon, and I am also the only girl in the Su family. The difference is that I am just an illegitimate daughter of the Su family. My father never intended to recognize me. It was only when he was eager to have a relationship with the Lu family that he remembered that the Su family still had a daughter like me. At first, Lu Fei actually quarreled many times about marrying me, but later we didn't know why. After we met several times, we actually agreed to the marriage. I thought I finally touched him and he finally fell in love with me a little. In the first few years of our marriage, we actually had a very happy time, just like a real couple. It was not until later that Dingli returned to China that I knew that he had been in the heart of a white moonlight who had gone abroad in earlier years. Not only Lu Fei likes him, but even my son, who is not a few years old, follows her every day, calling her Sister Lizzie. Sister Lizzie, would you like to be my mother? My mother is not good at all. She is an illegitimate daughter who can't be seen. I don't want her to be my mother. Little White, your mother will be unhappy if you hear this. Dingli touched Lu Bai's head, but looked up at me and smiled at me. Dingli's background is very good. Compared with the Su family, she is also good-looking. The most important thing is that she is the bright and upright daughter of the Ding family, which is very different from me. She always easily let Lu Fei come up for her and affect his emotions. Later, even Xiaobai began to dislike my identity. Just like now, even if I proposed a divorce like a declaration of war, it only stunned Lu Fei for a moment, and then I was attracted by Dingli's stomach disease at this time. Afei, I have a terrible stomachache. I guess I just got wet in the rain. She frowned and covered her stomach, sweating coldly, looking very painful. So the divorce I just proposed was like a light piece of paper, without a trace of waves. For a moment everyone was worried about Dingli and I was like the air. Sister Lizzie, Xiaobai will give you a hoo-hoo, and hoo-hoo won't hurt. I'll take you to the hospital. Lu Fei picked up Dingli and walked to the door in a hurry. When he passed by me, he seemed to finally remember me. He frowned and said to me, Su Mengbai, don't lose your temper. I'm the only one left at home. Well, I can just pack up my things and draft a divorce agreement. 2. In fact, I have very few things and there are very few traces of me in this house. My identity is destined to be a mouse who can't see the light and doesn't deserve to have a lot of things. The illegitimate daughter has always been a deep thorn in my heart. In fact, I knew Lu Fei much earlier than he knew me. When I was a student, I was isolated and bullied by my classmates in the school because of my identity as an illegitimate daughter. They often throw me into the toilet, feed me dirty garbage and slap me in the face. I often go home dirty and even my clothes are cut to pieces. But no one cares about me. For my mother, I am just a tool for her to climb the Su family. I am the only connection between her and the Su family. I must be good enough for the Su family to see me, so that my mother will be satisfied. But in those years it was common to be bullied, and I couldn't do it well at all, even like an ordinary person. She sent me to the aristocratic school where all the children of the family attended, hoping that she could make her climb to the top through me. She didn't want me to cause trouble for her, let alone because I went to find trouble for the children of those rich families. She won't. This is a hard and unpleasant thing for her, and it may even break her dream of flying on a branch and becoming a phoenix. I worked hard to send you to school. I didn't call you to cause trouble for me. If you don't provoke others, why will they only bully you? I'm telling you, you better give me a break. I want you to look good. You are so stupid. How can the Su family recognize you? You deserve to be bullied for the rest of your life. I live in such abuse and I also feel that I am a trash. It was Lu Fei who helped me when those people dragged me into the toilet again. Is this how Miss Tianjin makes a pie? Don't treat your classmates as human beings in school, and be careful that our Lu family doesn't treat your fathers and mothers as human beings in business. He put his pocket in and stood in the sun with cold words in his eyes. Those people seemed to be afraid of him and stopped trying to beat me. Because of that day, my life was a little better. At least they would no longer bully me so blatantly. Later, my grandmother took me away, and I never saw Lu Fei again until the Su family recognized me and contributed to my marriage with Lu Fei. In those years, I actually loved Lu Fei. He was the only one who reached out to me in those dark days. I have been bullied and have never felt the kindness of the world. Even my birth is a mistake, so I will be very grateful for the little kindness of others, and remember it deeply in my heart. At that time, Lu Fei was a god to me. So even if I know that he has a white moonlight and a woman he loves deeply in his heart, I won't quarrel. He once helped me. He is such a good person, isn't he? I should be satisfied if he can marry me and give me a family, right? In fact, he was very good to me at the beginning, perhaps because my face was a little similar to Ding Li's. It's just that as time goes by, our feelings have faded a lot. Later, when Ding Li returned to China, he simply didn't pretend in front of me that he began to hate our marriage. He felt that everything was arranged by the family. Obviously, he loved other girls deeply, but he couldn't give her the identity of his wife. Lu Fei is actually eager for freedom. What he hates most is being bound, and I, as the wife arranged for him by the family, is undoubtedly the existence he hates. In those days he often wandered outside, and I could only stay alone in those late nights. In fact, I am very afraid of the dark. My childhood experience made me afraid of the dark. I was often out of breath and cried at any time. I have to rely on drugs for treatment, but I never dared to let Lu Fei know about this. 3. I'm afraid that he will think I'm sick and hate me even more. I stayed up a lot of late at night by myself. It was not until I had Lu Bai that I was a little better. He became my only emotional sustenance. I marveled at the wonderful connection between the child and the mother. I swear to be a good mother, and I can't let Lu Bai be like me. I gave him almost all my tenderness. It's just that Lu Bai was taken by me when he was 1 year old and was picked up by the old lady of the Lu family. They said that I couldn't educate my children well. You have such a mother. How can you be a good mother? I held the child in my hand helplessly and looked at Lu Fei as if asking for help. In the dark days, he once stretched out his hand to me like a god, and I prayed that he could save me again. But he just coldly took the child away from my hand and said lightly, "You have had such an experience and your psychology is not as good as that of a normal person. Do you think you are suitable for taking care of the child?" His words were like a sharp knife which pierced my heart. It turned out that he knew, and he had always known that the things I had carefully hidden were so big in front of the world, as if the shame cloth had been lifted all of a sudden. During those days I once wanted to end myself directly, but Lu Bai's existence supported me to live. He has become my only hope, and I often go to see him secretly, just secretly glance at it. Sometimes Mrs. Lu will allow him to meet me for a while. He likes me very much and often speaks to me in a fluent pronunciation. "Mom, I like it. I like my mother." I feel so happy that I'm about to cry. Do I want a lot? In fact, what I want is just a little bit of warmth. Why is even this a luxury for me? When Lu Bai was 5 years old, Lu Fei finally showed mercy to take him back and took him back to me. In the years when Lu Bai was not with me, I was always careful and didn't dare to say a word more. No matter what, I thought it was my peace of mind and finally exchanged Lu Fei's soft heart. And he also said, "Su Meng Bai, if you are peaceful like this, nothing will happen. Don't worry about those little moths. You and I are just a commercial marriage. You will never be as good as Ding Li in my heart, not even as a hair of hers." It turned out that he thought that my illness was a lie to him, and it was all to save his scam. But it's nothing. At least Lu Bai came back to me. I often taught Lu Bai to write and draw, but later he gradually stopped staying by my side. There was a figure named Sister Lizzie in what he said. "Sister Lizzie is so beautiful. I want her to be my mother." "Dad, you can abandon your mother and marry Sister Lizzie as my mother. Okay?" Standing in the kitchen, my heart stung, but I still brought the fish soup to the table as usual. I comforted myself in my heart that there is no taboo on childish words and can't be taken seriously. 4. When Lu Fei took Lu Bai home, it was already the next day. I packed up my things and handed him the divorce agreement. He pinched his eyebrows, his face was deeply tired, and he looked helpless. "Su Meng Bai, don't mess around, okay?" Until now, he still felt that I was a mess and just forced him to come back to me by means of divorce. Even Lu Bai felt that I was trying to drive away his sister Lizzie under the pretext of divorce. He trotted over, pushed me hard and lost his temper at me. "Can you stop messing around? Sister Lizzie is so kind, but you always want to force her away." I was pushed back heavily and almost fell to the ground. I don't care too much. I just want to deal with the current affairs. I sighed heavily and pushed the divorce agreement back to Lu Fei. "Divorcing me is not something you've always wanted to do. Don't tell me that you really fall in love with me, and don't want to let me go." I said what Lu Fei hated the most, which was almost his reverse scales. Sure enough, he quickly signed the divorce agreement with disgust on his face. "Su Meng Bai, I hope you don't ask to come back at that time." I ignored him and left the place where I had been for 7 years with my things. Because of my mother, I used to long to have a home of my own, the kind of home like others with a father, a mother and children. I have the most primitive desire for love. I thought Lu Fei would be the one who pulled me out of the abyss, but he pushed me into a deeper abyss. Later with Xiao Bai, I gave him all my tenderness. I only asked him to give me a little warmth, but in the end, I became his most hated mother. Maybe people like me don't deserve happiness at all. I didn't go back to Su's house. My divorce from Lu Fei has lost its value to the Su family, and even became a stain. They will not welcome me. I quickly bought the ticket, but the destination was a southern city thousands of miles away from here. I went back to my grandmother's house. Pushing open the door of the yard, A young old man in her 70s was serving a group of chickens in the yard. When she saw me coming, she was obviously stunned and threw the bud valley in her hand on the ground and made a gesture to hit me. I let her toss and turn, but she shed tears first. "You dead girl, you haven't come back to see me as an old lady for so many years, and you don't know until you come back until now." I dodged with a smile and shouted, "Grandma, don't fight. I'm not back." Grandma's yard is full of fruits and vegetables, raising a group of chirping chicks, and a big yellow dog squinting in the sun. When he saw me coming, he didn't bark, which was quite humane. Grandma hurried to pick some vegetables and soon went out again. She said directly that she wanted to treat me, a rare guest. I couldn't help raising the corners of my mouth. This little old woman still remembers that I haven't come back to see her for so many years. My room was tidy, and even some things were added that I didn't have before. I guess it was bought by Grandma. Grandma was very good to me. In those years, except for Lu Fei, she was the most important person to me. Grandma is a very powerful person. Grandpa left early. She was a thin and weak woman who grew up with my mother. Unfortunately, my mother was unwilling to stay in the small town with my grandmother for the rest of her life. She did not hesitate to break with her grandmother and ran to the big city alone. It's a very far north. The North City is thousands of miles away from this southern town. I don't know how my grandmother spent those years alone, but she must have been very sad. In my memory before I was 17 years old, there was no grandmother until that year when my grandmother fell from the sky and took me out of the place where there was only pain and tears. Grandma is very kind to me. When I cry in the middle of the night, she will cook delicious wine dumplings for me. The sweet wine with Grandma's own dough dumplings is delicious. It can defeat all the unhappy things in the world. In the school in the town, no one will bully me. Everyone treats me very well, and envies me that I have a grandmother who can cook a lot of food. I no longer have to be hungry, beaten and scolded, and live with worry all day long. I have a beautiful skirt to wear, delicious food to eat, and my grandmother. That I am the happiest child in the world. I was also very competitive. I didn't embarrass the little old man and was admitted to college. The days in the small town are something I never dreamed of. A person like me who only has despicable people in life dares not ask for such warmth. In those years of working outside, no matter how busy I was, I would take time to go back to accompany the little old man who guarded the courtyard alone. She is always smiling and busy cooking a lot of delicious food for me. That's the only place to welcome me. Until my mother and the Su family came to me. 5. At that time my mentality was actually much better, enough to forget the pain my mother had brought me. It's just that when she appeared in front of me again, my heart couldn't stop stinging. I have never understood why she is my mother. After giving birth to me, she gave me countless pains as if she had never had a child. They told me about the marriage. The Su family needed a daughter, so they thought of me, who had been rejected by them. Facing my mother's sudden enthusiasm, I was at a loss and panic for a moment, which was something I had longed for countless times. But I quickly calmed down and treated each other coldly. I knew their purpose, but my stubbornness and disagreement are like a joke in their eyes. They calmly looked at my disagreement and my resistance, and finally my father, whom I had never met, said, "Isn't Susu a small town in the south that I like very much? I heard that your grandmother is there." He didn't finish his words, but the intention of threat was overflowing. I finally compromised. When I saw that the partner of the marriage was Lu Fei, I was actually glad. As I said, when I was young he was like a god to me. We met several times under the arrangement of the Su family and the Lu family. I didn't expect that this would make him change his decision to refuse marriage and accept me. After marriage, I used up almost all my talents to play the role of Mrs. Lu, and became Lu Fei's most satisfactory virtuous assistant. But until Dingley appeared, coupled with the pain brought to him by the commercial marriage, he began to express his disgust for me without concealment. I seemed to have returned to the darkest and most depressed days. Obviously, those things have long disappeared from my memory. Obviously, they have disappeared for a long time, haven't they? But they appeared once. And all this was caused by the person I thought could save me. He often goes home until he gets drunk outside. Sometimes I take Xiaobai and his friends to party outside. That call was made by Xiaobai with his mobile phone. I picked it up in surprise, but I heard Xiaobai's cold words. "Come and pick up my father. He is drunk with Sister Lizzie." So I went downstairs and drove to pick them up. His friends who usually play well are here, and the one who came to open the door for me was a girl who was dressed very expensive. "Mr. Lu, your wife is here to pick you up." I could hear the sarcasm in her tone. She even looked back at me up and down, impolitely looking at me from the beginning to the end. I don't dare to say anything. I just hope to take Lu Fei home quickly. As for Lu Fei, he should be drunk and holding a very beautiful girl in his arms. I guess that she should be Dingley, the Sister Li that Xiaobai often mentioned. Sister Lizzie, you see, she is my mother. She is not good looking at all. You are much more beautiful than her. Lu Bai said to Dingley like a treasure. "Afei, your wife is still here. Is it a little too much for you to do this?" Lu Fei's brother laughed and said that he meant to help me speak, but the intention of belittling me was obvious in his tone. Lu Fei looked very cold. I couldn't understand it, but I heard what he said clearly. She is not qualified to ask me about it. It's just a dog sent by the Su family. Then he frowned and finally gave me a look. Why are you here? She was about to open her mouth with trembling lips, but Lu Bai took the lead and said, Dad, I called her here. Sister Lizzie said she wanted to see my mother. With just one word, Lu Fei was speechless. He just turned his head and whispered something to Dingley, which made Dingley laugh out loud. Yo, isn't this a small rag? Do you still remember me? We met when we were studying before. The familiar voice, which I will never forget in my life, once brought me the source of darkness. If you don't say it, I haven't recognized it yet. It's true. Look at her stupid look. It's exactly the same as at that time. I'm so happy. Little Rag has the ability. They all climb on our Lu-less. They said what I was most afraid of sentence by sentence. I could hardly breathe and trembled all over. Those painful memories came one after another, and I almost fainted in pain. In the end, I couldn't pick up Lu Fei. I just opened the door tremblingly and went out. The wind was so strong that I knew that I couldn't drive back. But I didn't dare to take a taxi for fear of scaring others, so I just walked back step by step along the street. The feeling of pain and sad filled my every cell. The winter in the north was particularly cold, and I suddenly missed my grandmother's wine-brewed dumplings. 6. When Grandma came back, I just finished cleaning up, so I went to the kitchen to help her. My daughter likes Grandma's stewed chicken the most. Grandma said as she chopped the freshly slaughtered chicken into small pieces, and the wrinkles on her face were squeezed together. I nodded with a smile. I like to eat what Grandma cooks. You young people, I know that you work outside and don't eat properly when you're busy. Grandma kept nagging, but the work at hand did not stop, and she did it more cleverly than anyone else. My husband and son drove me away with my junior, but after I divorced, they regretted 39,103. 2 words back from time to time. A small head suddenly appeared at the door of the courtyard, and it shrank back. When I ran over curiously, I didn't see anyone. Well, I don't know where the child came from, but no one has wanted it. Grandma explained slowly in the kitchen. It's just that the child is not close to people. Sometimes he will come to my place to have some food and run away after eating. The next day, he will help me do the work of the family when I'm not at home. The child is a good child. I nodded clearly. When I had dinner at night, I deliberately stared at the gate of the courtyard. Sure enough, the little head was exposed again. Suddenly, he looked at me coldly and was caught by me. She subconsciously wanted to run but was stopped by me. I don't have the strength to run if I don't eat. I just cooked too much today and no one eats it, so I have to throw it away again. I walked over and led her into the house. She twisted and sat down at the dinner table. Grandma looked at us with a smile and got up to serve the meal. She is a thin and small girl with bright eyes, but she looks a little reserved and careful, and she dares not pick up more dishes. I suddenly thought of the situation in the Lu family, and I put a chicken leg in her bowl with heartache. Children need to eat more chicken legs to grow taller. She took it down flatteringly, but she didn't dare to look at me and just buried herself in eating. As soon as she finished eating, she wanted to leave again, as if she didn't dare to stay in this place for another second. Grandma shook her head and sighed. I leaned on the stool and shouted loudly, "Oh, I'm so tired. What if I don't want to wash the dishes?" I secretly looked at the little figure, and she really stopped. I heard her say the first sentence. I can help you wash the dishes. The sound is crisp, a bit like a cucumber in summer. Okay, then you help my mother-in-law wash the dishes, and I'll clean up the kitchen, okay? Grandma led the little girl into the kitchen with a smile, and I went upstairs to clean up the remaining room. I don't know if it's because I'm a mother, but I always have a sense of intimacy to children. After the little girl finished washing the dishes, she finally found that she had been fooled. I'm going to leave after washing the dishes. It's so dark outside. It's dangerous for you, a little girl, to go out. The little girl turned around and looked at me helplessly. I squatted down and patted the dust on her clothes for her. I've cleaned up the room for you, but I haven't prepared the clothes yet, so I'll wear my clothes first and make do with them, okay? I saw that her eyes were full of surprise and suddenly rushed into my arms. I took a few steps back by her strength, and then hugged her in a somewhat unreal way. The night was very thick, and there was a full moon in the sky. I clearly felt that somewhere in my heart seemed to be filled. 7. The little girl was completely left by me. I gave her a name and Ensuin with my surname. Grandma is also happy to have many children in the yard, which is more lively. When I went back to my grandmother's house for more than a month, I received a call from Lu Fei. In the phone, his voice was hoarse. He should have just come back from socializing. "Susu, Xiaobai has a fever and wants to see you." I looked at Anan beside me. She refused to sleep alone, so she slept with me all the time. I walked out of the room with the phone. "Lu Fei, we are divorced, and your affairs have nothing to do with me." The other end of the phone was silent for a long time. Just as I was about to hang up the phone, Lu Fei said again, "Susu, stop making trouble and come back." I sneered in a low voice and disdainfully, "Lu Fei, no matter what you think, we are indeed divorced. Also, it's useless to call your ex-wife when the child is sick. I don't believe you are such a brainless person. After saying that, I hung up the phone and blocked the number by the way. As soon as I opened the door, Anin was still asleep in bed, and I was relieved. Anin has gradually adapted to the life in the courtyard. At the beginning, she was always particularly embarrassed, as if she had caused a lot of trouble to me and my grandmother. She only eats a little bit every time she eats, and gets up very early every day to do housework. Anin, we are family members. You don't have to feel guilty or feel that you are a troublemaker. I rubbed her head and whispered, Grandma and I both like you very much. You are really good and great. We will never abandon you. You just need to be a child. She nodded in a daze and cried for a long time in my arms. I also had the impulse to cry for a moment. In fact, those words were also said to me. Su Mengbai, you are very good, so don't think that all misfortunes will come to you and feel that you don't deserve happiness, okay? Later, I received a lot of numbers from Beijing one after another, but I didn't answer them without exception. I could guess who it was. When I took Anin out to buy vegetables, I met a teenager. He seemed to know Anin. As soon as he saw Anin in my hand, he greeted him with a smile. Child, where have you been recently? I haven't seen you for a long time. Anin looked up at me and said, This brother used to take care of me and is my good friend. Anin has been with you recently, so I'm relieved. She's chubby now. She's a child. I haven't seen her for a long time. I thought something had happened. The teenager suddenly realized and laughed again. He seemed to like to laugh very much and he looked wanton. He insisted on sending us home. Coincidentally, his house was next to Grandma's yard. There is a wall between us. So you are my mother-in-law's granddaughter. My mother-in-law always tells me about you. Shen Huichuan knew that I lived next door to him, so he was not in a hurry to go home. By the way, he went in and said hello to his grandmother. Mother-in-law. I'm here again. Xiaochuan, why haven't I seen you for so long? Grandma and the big yellow dog sat together and stood up happily when they saw Shen Huichuan. I picked some grapes a few days ago, Susu, take some out and give Xiaochuan a taste. I was creating at home a few days ago. Shen Huichuan looked very amazing, and his grandmother also praised him happily. Xiaochuan is getting more and more powerful. I brought out the grapes and put them on the table in the yard. The grapes are grown by Grandma's own. They are very sweet. Anin and I both like to eat them. Shen Huichuan is so reckless that he doesn't look like a person of his age, smiling every day. Grandma also likes him very much and often invites him to dinner at home. After I came back, she shouted more frequently. When I go downstairs, I often see Shen Huichuan helping my grandmother do things. Sometimes Anin is also with me. On the contrary, I have become the most lazy one. After returning here, I also began to take on some design work and occasionally draw some pictures. My major in college was design and I was very good at it. At first, I had no reputation and few people came to me, and later there began to be some repeat customers. Sometimes when I was working, Shen Huichuan looked at me. I actually understood the expression in his eyes, but I had been taught once, and I dare not easily believe in love. It's funny, isn't it? It's like a general who lost the battle at the beginning of his way, and he never dares to step on the battlefield again. But for people like us, it takes too much time to heal the wind and snow they have experienced. Shen Huichuan is a singer who writes and sings by himself. How could the singer come to such a southern town? I drank the hot coffee in my hand and asked him. It's late winter now, and the style of the southern winter is bone-stinging. He took a cold breath. I came here with my friends before, and I suddenly fell in love with the quiet atmosphere here, so I simply bought a house here to live in. I laughed dumbly. Young people are good, do whatever they want and don't worry too much. It's almost the spring festival. Won't you go home? I won't go home. There is no one in my family recently. My parents went out to play. It's boring to spend the spring festival alone. He suddenly approached me and blinked his eyes. I was blushed by this sudden close-up until Anen's call pulled my thoughts back. Mom, my mother-in-law asked you to buy food for tomorrow's cooking. I coughed awkwardly. Anen, shall we go with Mom? I want to go too. Shen Huichuan gloated behind him. He must have seen my embarrassment at that moment. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and there are quite a lot of people shopping on the street. Miss Su is here to buy vegetables again. Take Xiaoanen with you. Anen is coming. Almost everyone in the town knows me, and people keep saying hello along the way. Shen Huichuan and I went all the way, choosing dishes. It was almost dark when we picked up and went home. Unexpectedly, there was a little snow in the sky. Ah, Mom, look. It's snow. I've never seen snow before. Anen shouted excitedly. That it made me much happier, and I couldn't help laughing. The hand that didn't carry the vegetables inadvertently suddenly had another hand. Shen Huichuan grabbed my hand and picked up Anen and trotted. Run! It's snowing. Go home quickly. Ha 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 ha. The teenager's unique voice seemed to have a unique beauty in the world. Even I couldn't help but be infected. I laughed and made trouble with him. Run! A monster is coming. Go home and eat Grandma's dumplings. Ha ha ha. That I couldn't help shouting and was pulled forward by Shen Huichuan. Anan not only wanted to keep the vegetables in her arms, but also wanted to shout with us. For a moment she was a little busy. Run! Hurry up and run! I was in a very good mood and I didn't put down my grin, until I saw two familiar figures, one big and one small, at the gate of the courtyard. 8. Shen Huaichuan knew about me, and he obviously guessed who came. Susu, stop it and come home with me, okay? Lu Fei's eyes were red, and there was an undisguised pain in his eyes. Shen Huaichuan put down Anan, and his hostility was not hidden in his expression. It's over. The monster is really coming. Anan curled her lips and took my hand. Mom, who is she? It's your adopted sister, but it's okay. As long as you come back, I can accept her and treat her as my own sister. Lu Bai immediately noticed Anan's existence. Mom, I don't want him to be my brother. Anan doesn't like him. Anan grabbed my sleeve and complained. I was a little relieved that Anan finally didn't dare to ask you for anything as before. I touched Anan's head. Well, Mom has only one child, Anan, and he won't be your brother. Mom, I am your son. Why don't you stand on my side? Lu Bai wanted to come up and get close to me, but Anan pushed him away fiercely, and then opened his hands to guard me. I don't allow you to hurt my mother. Keep away from us. Susu, who is he? Are you really not going to want us? Don't you even want Xiao Bai? Lu Fei refers to Shen Huaichuan. Since he saw Lu Fei, he has not let go of the guard and hostility in his eyes. I sighed. Lu Fei, we are divorced. I thought you were angry with me on purpose. I thought you would come back. I thought you would come back as long as Xiao Bai was still here. I didn't realize how completely wrong I was until you left. What I love deeply is you. Give me another chance, okay? I turned my face and didn't want to see him like this now. Lu Fei. I called his name. After 7 years of marriage, I have never shouted his name so seriously. We are divorced and your father and son have nothing to do with me. Why do you think I will give you another chance? Why do you believe that I will definitely go back? Why do you believe? Cheating in marriage just because of you? Just because you let your wife go to pursue your white moonlight? Or have you humiliated me for so many years? Lu Fei, if you have a little conscience, I beg you to let me go. Lu Fei seemed to be seriously wounded by me, and the tall man took a few steps back in disbelief. Mom, do you really want Xiao Bai? Lu Bai's eyes were full of sadness and sadness. In fact, I like Lu Bai's eyes very much, but I will never forget the strong hatred and disgust in those eyes, just like his father. Mom, are you coming back? Xiao Bai misses you very much. Xiao Bai loves Mom very much. When you were away, I was studying hard. I learned a lot. The teachers praised me, and they all liked me very much. He told me how well he did in my absence like a treasure, but I only thought of the day when he called me to pick up Lu Fei. He also said this to Ding Li. Xiao Bai, you used to tell me that when you liked Sister Lizzie and wanted Sister Lizzie to be your mother. Did you ever think that your mother would also be heartbroken? I looked into his eyes in a calm tone. Mom, I'm sorry. I really know I'm wrong. I like Mom. I don't want Sister Lizzie. I shook my head and sighed. I don't mean anything else. I just want to tell you that when a person is really disappointed in you and is hurt to despair by you, she won't look back. Forgiving someone is a simple thing, but the pain you once brought to others will always exist. Of course you like Sister Lizzie, but you shouldn't say that to your mother that if so, you used to be the person she loved the most, but her love for you turned into the sharpest knife that stabbed her. Lu Bai was stunned by what I said, and then tears flowed out. Mom, I was wrong. Will you go home with us? Forgive me. Okay. Mom won't forgive you, this monster. You hurt my mother and asked others to forgive you, shame. Anan turned around and hugged me. I smiled and squatted down to pick her up. Shen Huaichuan didn't say anything, but he always stood beside me and looked at Lu Fei fiercely. I hugged Anan and pulled Shen Huaichuan to turn back to the yard. Lu Bai, if I hadn't left, believe me, you would hate me hundreds of times more than you used to. After saying that, I walked into the yard without hesitation. They still wanted to follow, but my grandmother ran out with a broom in her hand like a fire wheel. Get out of here. Our family doesn't welcome you. Don't disturb us, Susu. I laughed dumbly. Grandma hasn't changed for so many years. She is very protective of the calf. 9. Lu Fei and Lu Bai still didn't leave and found a house nearby to live in. I followed him. After all, we have nothing to do with each other. On New Year's Eve, they knocked on my door big and small. It was Shen Huaichuan who opened the door. The teenager couldn't hold back his temper. When he saw that it was Lu Fei, he wanted to punch him up. Fortunately, he was stopped by his grandmother. Oh, Xiaochuan, don't hurt yourself. It's not good to beat people on New Year's Eve. Let's bear with our temper first and wait until after the first month. Mom, can I celebrate the spring festival with you? We haven't had dinner together for a long time. Lu Bai's face was red in the wind and snow, and his eyes seemed to burst into tears. Lu Fei stood behind him. It's really a coincidence that it came. Today's dumplings are not wrapped enough. Shen Huaichuan retracted his fist, stood behind his grandmother and said loudly. Anan also helped on the side. The dumplings are not wrapped enough. It's not enough for Anan to eat alone. Shen Huichuan rubbed her face with a smile. Anan has enough to eat. Let's eat more later. Anan nodded like pounding garlic. She wore a red jacket today, and I specially went to the street to buy her a red head rope and tied 2 small pulls. Her whole body was red and round and cute. Grandma, come in and eat. The food is getting cold. Don't worry about them. I've already called Mrs. Lu. Someone will take care of them later. I didn't go out, so I sat on the stool and shouted at them from afar. But Lu Fei and others still stubbornly refused to leave. I sighed and walked over. Mom, you are finally willing to see me. You have forgiven Xiaobai, haven't you? I ignored his words, but when I saw Anan's cute appearance, I couldn't help squatting down and rubbing her face. It was so cute. I helped Anan tidy up her clothes and then said, Xiaobai, you are just like your father. You are used to my attachment because I used to love you like that. Now I am free and no longer single-mindedly on you. You are just a little unaccustomed to it, that's all. I have called Mrs. Lu. Someone will come to take you back soon. Don't disturb my life anymore. Then I closed the door of the courtyard in front of them, and Anan whispered beside me, it's better to close the door so that the monsters can't come in. Lu Bai obviously heard it and shouted at Anan before the door was closed. You are the monster. You are the monster. Anan crossed her waist and hid behind me. Even if I'm a monster, my mother loves me. I am also a little monster with a mother. I closed the door and laughed at Anan. I took her hand and invited my grandmother to dinner. Just after midnight, dazzling fireworks bloomed in the sky, which was very beautiful against the backdrop of the night. It's a new year, I said to myself. 10. Lu Fei was taken back by Mrs. Lu, who came from behind, together with Lu Bai. Later he didn't come to see me again. He was a person who wanted to lose face like that. Bowing his head once was probably his greatest tolerance. Shen Huichuan's new song was written, and he was the first to bring it to me and play it. The teenager leaned on the railing of the balcony. The broken hair in front of his forehead slightly covered his eyebrows. His eyes were slightly closed, and his fingers gently plucked the strings. His voice was clear and pleasant, hitting my heart one by one. I smiled slightly and enjoyed his performance. Anan is about to reach the age of primary school, and she is looking forward to the life of starting school. He always asks me a lot of questions excitedly. Will I get along with my classmates? Can I learn that knowledge? Mom, will the teacher like me? I answered patiently one by one. Children's world is always wonderful and impossible for adults to understand. What I can do is to give her as much love as possible, a lot of love. Grandma's cooking skills are getting better and better, and Anan's mouth has been raised. Except for Grandma's cooking, no one eats. My work is getting better and better, and I am already a well-known designer. Many cooperations came one after another, and some people even came to give me a high salary and wanted me to go to their company. I refused one by one. I prefer the quiet and simple life now, and the person I love is by my side, which is the best. As for Lu Fei and others, as long as they don't appear in my life, it's great. I used to suffer from that experience and scolded myself for my stupidity. But after all, we can't change a lot of things, can we? What we can do is to learn from it. At least I have truly become myself. That's enough. Shen Huichuan has been going out for a while these days. His new song became popular overnight, and he is busy preparing for going out for the performance. He also said that he would definitely bring me a gift when I came back. I said okay with a smile. I have to admit that people like Shen Huichuan really attract me. But he is a singer, and he is destined to go out and stand on a bigger stage. And I am destined to be the one left behind. I prefer a stable and stable life. We are destined to be incompatible individuals. Moreover, the mood of teenagers always comes suddenly and goes quickly. He will let go one day, and then meet the girl he really likes and spend the rest of his life with her. And I already have Anan and Grandma. That's enough, that's enough.